Tea break tips.
Find and replace. Yeah, it's a pretty standard feature on a lot of programs, but there's a couple of cool little things here you might not know about that I want to explore. So if we start by clicking this little button at the bottom there, this brings up our list of keyboard shortcuts. So we've got find and replace in there. So for find, it's Command F and then Option Command F for replace. There's also a little arrow at the top there, which you can use to toggle whether the replace is shown or not. Another cool feature is if I was to select some text and then do my find, it automatically populates in the find field. So that's a really cool little feature. So let's just do a replace and replace this link colored with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, replace it all. And you can see that updating there. So let's just undo that and put that back. So that covers your basic features of find and replace. But have you ever wondered what these buttons at the top do? What are these three buttons all about? So if I do a search here for Unpacked, we can see it comes up in this message 7 times. This with a lowercase u. But if I was to click this button here, which is our match case button, it makes it case sensitive, so it no longer matches. If I was to update that to an uppercase U, you can see all 7 of those again. Again, if I was to change this to just packed, it's matching all 7 of them. But if I was to click the whole word matching button, then it's not going to match because we don't use the word packed anywhere. It's always just unpacked. So the last field here is for regular expression, or regex as it's known. This allows us to do some quite complicated logic in our find and replace. It's pretty cool. So let's look at an example. If I was to search for font size 16 pixels, let's get that up, you'd see that comes in twice. But there's lots of different ways. What if there was no space between the font size and the 16 pixels? Then it doesn't show up. So there's a lot of potential ways that this could be displayed, whether there's a space between the colon and the value, or a space after it before the semicolon. Is it part of a longer string? Is it part of a inline style or a CSS style? So there's lots of options. And if we want to get it precise, we can use some regex logic so we make sure we're getting all the cases of it. So if we put in a few different examples of the font size here, so here we can see sometimes we've got a space in there, sometimes we've got a semicolon at the end, sometimes not. So if we wanted to cover all of these eventualities, we can use regex to do that. Now, writing regular expression can be a bit tricky to get your head around, but luckily this is one of those areas where AI is actually very proficient at writing the code. So if I just put a prompt in here asking, please can you give me some regex to use in a find and replace tool that will select font size followed by 16 pixels followed by a semicolon or a double quote, then maybe a space either side of the 16 pixels text, then replace that with a font size 18 pixels but keep the last character that might be a semicolon or a double quote. So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. Okay, great. So let's take this search term and copy that and then go over to Design Studio, paste in there. And you can see we've got no results, but once I select the regular expression, then we can see it comes up 6 times and including all the cases where we've got that. Now, if I take the replace with code, copy that and place that in. So here there's $1 is this first value, so it's finding the font size, and then $2 is the second value, which is the end character, be it a semicolon or a double quote. So if I start replacing them, you can see it's adjusting and it's keeping the value before, so whether it and after, so whether it starts with a space or not, whether it has a quote at the end or a semicolon. So that replaces all of them like that. So another use case might be if we want to update some class names, but potentially you might have a word that's you're using as a class name that actually also appears a number of times in your email content. So you want to do a search that will only include that word when it appears in the class name and only when it's a whole word. So here I've got my class foo, foobar, foobar bar, and lastly I'll put one as bar foo. And then if we were to put in some regular expression, we can make sure this is only going to select the class name. Um, so if I paste something in here, so this is going to select the class when it equals foo, and this is actually selecting the whole class equals piece of the code, and it's selecting the classes either side of the class we want to update. So we can see we're putting the $1 and $2 for those two values of the before and after text, and then we just update there, and you can see it's updated all of those. So this could be a really powerful tool when you're working on some large amount of code and you want to make some quite specific updates and be quite selective where you're making those changes. And I'll definitely recommend checking out some AI to help you write those queries to get you started. Thanks a lot.